are stories that connect us to ourselves and each other. These stories reveal who we are and show us the many vivid, wild colors of our truth. Welcome to Soul Wanderings, where we raise spiritual awareness and foster connections through these shared stories and personal experiences. And now, exclusively on KGRA Radio, I give you your host for Soul Wanderings Radio. Here's AJ.
Hello, Wanderers. Welcome. This is Soul Wanderings, and I am AJ Rasmussen, your host. We are live on KGRA-DB and on video over on KGRA Facebook and YouTube pages, at least for the first 30 minutes of our show. And I'll share with you how you can continue your time with us for the entirety of the show, as well as how you can support this incredible station just before the first break. But first, tonight is an exciting night. I've been waiting for this night for a while for a few reasons. One, it's Soul Wanderings, which means we get to wander with a new soul, which is always an awesome thing. It's always fantastical. And we have an inspirational guest you will adore, which we'll get to meet here in just a few moments. And bonus tonight, we have a special guest co-host this evening. So there's a lot going on tonight. Grab a drink, get a cozy seat, get ready to join us. Our co-host really needs zero introduction. I'm sure the majority of you know this angel already. She'll probably laugh that I called her an angel. I think she's an angel. However, for those of you who do not know, let's welcome Maria Duff to the show. She is the winner of being a co-host on my 200th episode. And she got a choice to choose what show she wanted to co-host. And she chose from the list of the rest of my guests for the year, she chose tonight specifically. This is what she wanted to do, was co-host the show. Hi, Maria.
Hi, AJ. How are you?
I'm so excited to have you here. I'm like a 5-year-old right now. I feel really giddy because I have two powerful women on my show, and I know I'm going to end this show like it's going to be like fireworks. You know that feeling when you're surrounded by good, powerful women? It just feels amazing when you're done spending time with them.
Yeah. Yes. Courtney is, I can't wait for this. This is going to be very interesting because this is a subject that have always caught my attention, but I've never been able to study into it very far and not as detailed as Courtney has. So I'm pretty excited to hear this tonight.
Yes, and also, I mean, you have the book. You know how detailed she gets, so that was so helpful. I learned a lot, and I'm around this stuff all of the time, so that was really good for me.
Yes.
Well, thank you for calling in and supporting the show and wanting to co-host a Soul Wanderings episode with me. I'm very happy to have you here.
I just figure this will get us a little bit closer to having margaritas together. Absolutely. At some point in time. Yes.
Always down. Always down. If it's all fresh and yummy, you know? So
good. Yes.
Okay. Well, you know, they have the mixes that are just like the real deal. Let's get the real deal. All right. And you probably are all wondering about our guest who's hanging out with us here on the video. This is our guest, Courtney. And Courtney, I forgot to ask you how you pronounce your last name.
It's Marchesani. The CH is actually hard, so it sounds like Chianti because it's Italian.
Oh, beautiful. Marchesani. Mm-hmm. This beautiful goddess is the author of 4 Gifts of the Highly Sensitive, and we're going to refer to this book all night. So good. And she's the developer of Highly Sensitive Gifts Test, which will tell you how to take. It's a good one. And she was named as the 2017 Hay House Writers Workshop Award winner. Her insights into sensitivity help readers identify their gifts of intuition, empathy, vision, and expression to maximize their potential while also learning how former trauma may have shaped them. That was a big one. That was a big one when I read that. It connected so many dots of why I am the way I am. So, wow, thank you for writing this book and welcome to Soul Wanderings.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited. I feel like this is a huge honor, and I just love that you've read the book and that you gained insights and you felt it resonated with you. I mean, that we could just stop right there, and I would feel like, really excited about your opening. But I love Soul Wanderings, and it's such a beautiful name for where we go and where we're going to go tonight. So I'm interested.
Good. Thank you. That is just wonderful. There's so much to you. I mean, your bio was extremely long and I could read all of that, but what better opportunity we have you here with us to share with us yourself a little bit more about you and who you are.
First of all, before we go into that, I just want to say if there's going to be margaritas and they're going to be authentic, please send. If I'm in the area, I would love to partake in that. I was in Walmart recently when I was home in Pennsylvania, and it was all the mixes, and like the big bottles and stuff. And I was like, wow, there's mixes, big mixes.
I've perfected a fresh lime margarita, and I can't wait to share with you ladies.
Yes. Okay.
I'm excited.
That's my jam.
So I could go into a little of the bio, but
more so of who you are in your own words would be lovely.
Yeah, I think it gets lost in the bio. It's a lot of words, and while I appreciate the way it was put together, I think that what led my journey was an extraordinary experience. I think that's the best way to put it. And I see people who in the community. It's kind of interesting because when we started the call, it was about unidentified aerial phenomenon. We were talking about that a little bit before we came on. And while my journey didn't start with that topic per se, I do feel like it relates. Mm-hmm. And it relates to extraordinary experiences. So I had a powerful one, and that transformed my perception really about life. And that made me go into the topic of extraordinary experience, specifically psychic phenomenon and intuition. That's kind of what led me down the path.
Yeah. And so you had several experiences of your own that were validations for you, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I mean, life-saving validations. And I think that was the extreme. I was kind of on the extreme end where I didn't have these type of experience since I was a child. A lot of people do. They explain having these extraordinary or anomalous experiences when they're kids, whereas mine didn't happen until I was in my 20s. And so I really had to kind of reverse engineer, what this was in my own life and what it meant. And that's why I'm really pleased to hear that you liked the book, because I think I made some connections there in that whole reverse engineering process when I went and dove deep into the field of discovery.
Yeah, I won't lie. I'm going to read it again because some of it was a little over my head just because it's not within my understanding as of yet. Okay. Right? But because I don't understand everything yet, because I'm a feeler, thinking analytically and all of those things is a little much for me, but I can't wait to dive into it again. But yes, such a good book. I love all of the directions you came from. So every single person who's had similar experiences, they can relate to that.
Well, I always tell people if you get bogged down in the medical studies, jump to the gifts, jump to the more fluid parts that are easy to digest as a reader. I did put a lot of medical studies in there for people that were really interested in that part of it, but it can get a bit tough to wade through it. But I included it just in case if people wanted to circle back and look at things like autoimmune system issues or gastrointestinal issues, right? The connection between the physiology of the highly sensitive person while also tying it into these extraordinary experiences. I think that's where my work kind of departs from other books that you'll read about sensitivity and the gifts.
Yes. And that's why when I wrote you an email saying what I said about this I can't remember my exact wordage, but this book explained so much to me. I have had trauma. I have a neurological autoimmune disease, and I've had little things on and off throughout the course of my life. And in this, all of the dots, they just kept connecting like, oh, that's why. Oh, that makes sense. And it
Good.
just really resonated with me. And I finally feel like I know when we all start to have experiences that are out of the norm, right? We feel crazy. We feel like we're going crazy.
Yes.
Maria, have you had those experiences where you're like, okay, I know you're very intuitive, but having like, people even tell you you're crazy when you're having those experiences.
Oh, yeah. And I kept my mouth shut a lot. But
Mm-hmm.
when I got into the paranormal investigations, what a better way in the world to let everybody know you're crazy and this is what you're feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was the best part because I'm like you, but I didn't hit any of all of, gosh, I was in my 30s, 40s. I was in my 40s before I started paying attention and then doing the backtracking thing going, oh, so that was something paranormal I saw when I was a kid. I just didn't know it was.
Right. And so everybody's experience is different when you're little. And sometimes, like, some people are born into families that this is like common. And even when you're a kid, your relatives will say, well, we're different. And this is how we're different. And this is how we're different from like the people in the outside world. I mean, I've had conversations with individuals who were identified when they were children to have these extraordinary abilities like intuition, remote viewing, psychic phenomenon. And so it's addressed. Whereas some individuals, not so much, so you can have a predisposition for these experiences, but not recognize it. And that's one of the things that was fascinating to me looking at it as a researcher, like, wow, first of all, it can be genetically inherited. I mean, I always kind of had that as a question in my mind, is this genetic? But I didn't have any proof for it, but I kind of thought maybe. And so I started asking around to individuals in my family. And, that was a mixed bag because some people are, have different kind of beliefs, especially religious beliefs. And so I really got a lot of negative criticism when I came out of the closet and started to talk about what was happening with me. And so I worked in a professional setting as a counselor that didn't allow for it. And then in my family, I also found that it wasn't accepted either. And so for me, it became like a chicken and the egg kind of thing. Was I always sensitive as a kid? But I was suppressing it because it wasn't accepted in my immediate family. And then when I was in my 20s and out of my family house and I was starting to develop my own abilities, let's say, right, then they blossomed. And so I don't know like what the answer to that is just in general, how it falls along certain lines, but I do know it's most likely inherited. There is definitely a genetic predisposition for these kind of experiences, whether they're called paranormal or spiritual or transformative. There's nuances, but it definitely seems to be a lineage, a genetic lineage.
Do you believe that it skips generations?
I think it can. Yes, I definitely think it can, because you can have a sensitive kid in the family and the brother and sister isn't necessarily showing the same. Right. So that's also kind of similar, the way the alleles work in the genetics and the DNA and how it shows up. I mentioned the one study about the genetic hypomorphism in the intuitive chapter. And this kind of points to the fact that the neuroanatomical differences between an intuitive, the ones that they studied anyway, just have a greater expression of intuition through this neuroanatomical change in the brain. It doesn't mean that it's a gene that wasn't there. It's a gene that's actually firing more and creating a physiological greater effect. So I like to explain that because sometimes, when you talk about predispositions and skipping a generation, it could just be the way the physiology comes down. And so, yes, it can skip a generation, or a brother and a sister who are born to the same parents might not have the same strength of that hypomorphic gene. So it depends.
Yeah. If someone isn't showing signs of being sensitive or intuitive or having any type of ability, do you feel like they still have that ability inside of them? They just haven't awakened it yet? Like, do we all carry the abilities?
I look at it in a couple different ways. I think that intuition is a human trait. I think everybody has intuition. I think we're all born with it. It's closely linked with things like curiosity, creativity. Those are human, right, traits that we all have. But I do think that what we're talking about is an extraordinary type of intuition, which is it's been documented now in a lot of different ways and in a lot of different studies. And so I do think that we all have it, but I do think some people have more of it. It's like a gifted basketball player or a softball player, right? Who has a talent, and then you develop the talent and you become an all-star. And so I've been heard it described as Indy 500 drivers and different types, right, of talent. And so I think it really depends on how much you get genetically, but also how you develop it. But do I think we all have it? Yes. So that's kind of a complex answer to your question, but I don't think that it's fair to say that we all don't have it, because I think that intuition is a natural instinct that we do all have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to believe that. I like to agree with that. I've heard it both ways, though. Some people say you're either born with it or you're not, and some people say we all have it. And I believe we all have intuition, definitely. It's just a matter of fact of how much we're working out that muscle. Like how much are you using your intuition to make it stronger than what it was?
Well, I think in situations of fear, let's talk about that human instinct, right? So when you're in a real, true fear-inducing situation, your intuition is there. Everybody has it in that moment to warn us and to tell us your life is in danger. And it's been shown innumerable times how intuition shows up for us when it's a true fearful situation where your life is on the line. Mm-hmm. But, right, that's also an extraordinary circumstance, right, where you have to respond, right? And your intuition is trying to warn you and try to save your life. But that's rare. Those occurrences are very rare. And so when you start to get into the subtleties of intuition and how it shows up, it's always there in terms of like decisions that we're making, partnerships, jobs, right? It becomes like a day-to-day thing where we want to use our intuition, where you see the difficulty, and especially people who want to tap into their intuition, but they're not sure how. It becomes complex, right, on how to rely on it and trust it. And so I do think a lot of us in life-threatening situations can attest to the fact that it's there, right? That's how we see it in front of our face when we get those warnings. Mm-hmm. But it's the day-to-day stuff that people want to rely on it, and they don't necessarily know how to listen to it.
Right. That makes so much sense. And I could see, oh, what a great answer. I've never really thought of it like that. But it resonates deeply. That makes so much sense to me.
It gets confused because of anxiety. And so that's one of the things that you see people who are trying to rely on it get so frustrated. I had one woman, she was a young woman, and she'd been through a horrible divorce. And I'm not laughing at her, but I'm just saying that, she was so fed up with trying to trust her intuition because she just felt like she made this terrible decision around a relationship. It ended not the way she wanted to. And she was trying, and she was like, I don't even want to talk about intuition. She gave me the hand, because I was like, you can trust your intuition. And she was like, Ixnay on intuition. I don't even want to hear it. And I was like, okay, now's not the time. But it's like when you look at stories also of women, okay, who have survived dangerous relationships, violent relationships, domestic violence, things in this vein, their intuition was warning them. And it's consistent, and they might not consider themselves more intuitive than anyone else, but the intuition was definitely saying over and over and over, you need to get out or you need to leave. Yeah. The problem is it gets confused with anxiety, right? Mm-hmm. The intuitive warning signs get confused with anxiety. And so that was one of the things I tried to clarify in the book is like, anxiety is one thing. True intuition feels different. It's a different feeling. Mm-hmm. It's not anxiety. Your anxiety is kind of warning you that you're not in a situation that you're happy about. You're not feeling good about it. And true intuition, life-threatening intuition is different. It'll warn you, and there's no question that it's your intuition saving your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why do you think some of us have naturally the intuition more than others?
Well, I think where my work departs a little bit from other folks is that I took a deep dive into post-traumatic stress disorder. And, there's a lot of esoteric material out there that talks about intuition, from a spiritual perspective. And I include that perspective as well in my book. But I do think that when you have had early life experiences that are very difficult, right? They're called adverse childhood experiences. And there's been studies. There's been serious clinical studies about children who've experienced, more chaos, more difficulty, sometimes violence, right? Or sometimes sexual violence, right? You become, as a child, more adept at sensing when those things are oncoming. So there was a study that I wrote about that was in the Journal of Nervous Disorders that talks about these individuals that reported psychic phenomenon. And they studied the individuals who were reporting them, but then they also studied their early life. And they reported having early life childhood experiences, including sexual trauma. And so this study was one of the first studies to link psychic phenomenon, early adverse life experiences and intimate violence, and the abilities, the gifts of sensitivity. And so I kind of looked at that and went, yes, because what they're doing essentially, these small children, is developing a hypersensitivity to their environment, which is to reach out with their sensory awareness and detect harm so that they can find a way to avoid it in the future.
Wow.
And that made a ton of sense to me when I read that study. And then I read all the comments from the people in the academia that were like, essentially this is bull. But to me, I was like, this actually has the ring of truth to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that sensitivity is a very real part of post-traumatic stress. I think that acute stress has a way of shaping the gifts. And a lot of people talk about it in terms of sensitivity being a curse, but I don't. I look at it as being a blessing. And I think when you press those gifts into service a lot more when you're younger, then you develop them over time into adulthood. So that's kind of my perspective. It's my opinion.
Yeah. I like your opinion and your perspective.
It's different.
It is, but I appreciate it. And it, like I said earlier, it makes so much sense to me because everything you're sharing, like if we were in a classroom and someone was saying, have you experienced this? Have you experienced this? Raise your hand. This would be me. This would be me. This would be me. And so it makes so much sense why I am the way I am, like I said earlier. And so I'm going to hold this book near and dear because it's like a manual to my gifts and why they are occurring. So thank you for that.
Tonight I'm so happy that you felt that way. I really am.
No, I'm sure I'm not the only one. This book is a gift in of itself. This book right here, everyone, I want you to check it out. Go over to Courtney's website, which is inspiredpotentials.com. There is a little sensitive, not a little, it's actually a long test, but it's worth it. Take the sensitive test and you'll be able to learn if you're an empath, intuitive, visionary, or an expressive. And we'll get more into that here after the break. But before we go to break, we are at the 30-minute mark where we will be moving over to the members area, the members only area on KGRADB.com. So if you've not picked up your membership yet, please do so. And when you do, you can use my special promo code, which is SOUL21, which is SOUL21. And using this promo code allows you to receive 30% off your annual membership. Once you're in, you'll have exclusive access to all of the KGRA audio and video archives, as well as the special presentations and video interviews, series, and upcoming digital specials and conferences. So to all of our current members, thank you for joining us here on this amazing platform. And to those of you who are interested, now is the time to grab yourself a monthly or annual membership. And be sure to use the promo code SOUL, SOUL21, to get your 30% off for the annual, which is the best option for your investment. And if you do choose the monthly option, you can use the promo code WANDER, WANDER. Come join us, and thanks to all of our members for your support to KGRA DB, and we'll see you there shortly.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA Classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button. So just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
Hello and welcome back to Soul Wanderings, heard here on KGRADB.com. If you're listening live with us at this time, it means that you have taken the energy and investment to spend your time with us, and that doesn't go unnoticed and is very much appreciated. Thank you for supporting the station. Tonight, I have been blessed with this beautiful opportunity to hang out with these goddesses. So good.
Oh, wow.
Maria, I'm excited about it, and I know I see you much differently than you feel for yourself, but look at this light. Look at this bright, shiny light you are. Maria Duff is our co-host tonight, and she was the winner of the 200th episode when she called in to be the guest co-host, and she chose tonight to be our co-host, which is just fantastic. And then we have our beautiful guest, Courtney, who wrote this book, 4 Gifts of the Highly Sensitive. And there's more. Embrace the science of sensitivity, heal anxiety and relationships, and connect deeply with your world. No joke. That's some serious stuff. I love how you put embrace the science of sensitivity. Not many people would connect those two together.
No, I mean, I think that that's one of the things that I feel passionate about is advocating for the fact that, yes, it's considered esoteric in a lot of ways, what happens with the gifted sensitive and their experiences. But I did find a lot of support that it is It is scientific. And so I was blessed with being able to talk with other scientists who could validate it for me and went on the record with their own science that hasn't even been published, to support our efforts, really, for sensitive people to be acknowledged and accepted. And so that it's an advocacy effort. A large part of this is, I feel like that's my purpose.
Yeah, which I feel is needed. Being a sensitive myself, the ridicule, the judgment, the negative energy that's sent your way for having these abilities it's a lot to carry around with you if you choose to do so. And people, like we were saying earlier, people just think you're off your rocker.
Looney
Right?
Tunes.
A wackadoo, yeah. I've heard it described so many horrible pejorative words that it's like nothing phases me. And
the blessing and curse was real when you said that. It's like people think of it as a curse, but it is both. So which side do you want it to be?
I want it to be the positive side. I think that's my intention in my heart, is in my own passion now, is to shed light on it, and to also speak the truth, and that it's not, perfect, but there is certainly a positive side to it. Right. I mean, I've had life-saving experiences that I really didn't even know, how to explain with words at the time. It was kind of beyond words. It would be considered paranormal or supernatural. Right. And so when I try to describe those experiences to other people, even with having witnesses, other people were like, that's not possible.
Yeah.
That's just not possible. And I was like, it happened, like I was like so eager. I was so eager to talk about what I experienced, but other people didn't see it or feel it the same way. And there were people that were certainly like non-judgmental who tried to be accepting, but there was still like this skeptical part of their mind that was like, is she just putting a little too much on that or exaggerating? And to this day, even in the book, I'm not exaggerating my claims. They're real experiences from real sensitive people who are kind of on that farther end of the spectrum, and it is real.
That's one of the things I enjoyed about your book were the stories. That they weren't just your experiences. You had several other experiences in there. Before we get even deeper into the book, let's go over the 4 gifts and what they are.
Yeah, okay. That's good. That's a good starting point. So I delineated 4 of them, but there's more likely a whole host of other types of patterns, but these were the 4 that I kind of delineated first. And I think that my work will go further. But intuition, empathy, vision, and expression were the 4 that I started with. They're like my building blocks. And it's basically these 4 patterns or personality types that are that emerge from having sensitivity. So sensitivity is the overarching like umbrella, but if you conceive of it, then they fall underneath that umbrella. And so intuition is the first one that I go into. It's being able to get answers or sudden information or acquisition of information without knowing how or why you get it. And so it's been described as going from A to Z without knowing how or why you get there. And so it's not a logical process. It's not intellectualism. It's not rational. It becomes this lightning fast comprehension is the best way to describe it. Like the light bulb going off. So it's not just getting the acquisition of information. It's knowing that it's right. And the phenomenal thing about intuition and intuitive people is that they're somehow, this is described under the creative processes. It's somehow getting the answer before you even ask a question. This is for like more creative type people. They somehow get this answer before they're even questioning. So that's even like really woo, right? Like, where is the information coming from? But somehow it appears right and it's on course. And so intuitives are not only just getting answers to questions, they're also looking at the world through multiple systems, right? And even overlapping systems and kind of piecing it all together. And they're often like system disruptors. So they're trying to create equality and they're trying to deliver solutions to things that might be unequitable. Right. So intuitives can run the gamut in how the intuition actually expresses itself. But essentially they're able to get information from their storehouse, which I consider like the unconscious, if it's this big field within them, and they do it in a lightning fast way. So that balance between conscious and unconscious is very fluid. Then empaths, that's the second type. Empaths are individuals who are able to feel and detect other people's feelings in their own mind and body. Not only that, they feel emotional currents like in any environment that they're in. So if there's someone who probably suffers the most, I would say it's the empath, in my opinion, because a lot of times, if they don't know they're empathic, deeply empathic, they're picking up on all this emotional undercurrent and feeling other people's emotions are in their own body, and they don't necessarily know they are. Once you understand that you're an empath and you figure it out, then it becomes a magnificent gift because you're able to like discern other people's motivations, detect what's going on with them emotionally, be able to read relationships like nobody's business with crazy accuracy, right? And then an empath will be able to look at somebody and be like, oh, well, this, and this is wrong, right? And you'll be able to like tell somebody as an empath, hey, this is what you need to do. Now, whether they listen or not, or whether they act on it, that's a whole nother thing. But empaths usually have crazy accuracy with their emotional awareness and their emotional information that they receive.
Do you feel that way, Maria?
Oh my gosh. I can walk into a room and be just fine. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I've got to get out of here.
Yeah.
I'm in the worst mood I've ever been in, and I've got to leave. And I've noticed also what you were talking about with how you can talk with other people in their relationships. My son has warned everybody, if my mom doesn't like you, we're not going any further.
Right, because he
listens.
Like, this is bad news bears.
Yeah.
Like, don't get involved. Yes. But I have found, like, with the emotional awareness sometimes, I've had to mature a lot from when I was younger, because I didn't even recognize that I had that empathy like you do. And I would just tell people, like, what are you doing? Like, this seems so obvious to me. And my girlfriends would like stay invested in these relationships, Mm-hmm. And so I became like the bad friend, right? Because I was seeing the dynamics of it. And I learned not to do that anymore, to just listen and hear things and not like try to guide or direct, because one, it was probably not my place, even though I was a good girlfriend in this situation and I was trying to like warn. The person might not want to hear it. And so I became mature, enough when I got older to understand that you can feel all that as an empath, but if the other person's not ready to hear it, you can't really deliver that message. I mean, you can deliver it in other ways that are kind. But I had to get some training on that. A lot of training, actually, on how to be more soft in a delivery of a message. So then there's the visionaries. So the visionaries are another gifted subset of these people who have a ton of sensitivity, essentially. They have the ability to see. It's been called clairvoyance. It's been called other different names in different types of communities. But the way I conceive of it is it's access, easy access, kind of like a fluid access to the mind's eye or a mental field that they use to solve problems. So they're the quintessential problem solvers, but the way their visual acuity works, it works in many different ways. So you can have a visionary, two different visionaries, and their visionary ability works for them differently. So I kind of have the hardest time describing the visionaries, but in general, what they're able to do is imagine in that mind's eye space, which is typically right in front of their eyes in that field, or sometimes it can be internal in the internal field. They can see objects, directions, mapping, facial recognition. They can use the information that they perceive in their spatial awareness and put it in their mind's eye and solve problems. So it's not just clairvoyance, right? Or an actual clairvoyant who is a visionary, although that might be the case. These could be individuals who are engineers, technical people, interior designers, feng shui practitioners. I mean, it depends on how it expresses itself. So that's one of the most difficult, really, to detect. But once you start talking to visionaries, they do kind of follow a certain pattern that emerges in their own visionary ability. And then the final one is the expressives. The expressive individuals I kind of drew out of this subset of sensitivity that I found when I did all the research, and it's called aesthetic sensitivity. And so these individuals are kind of like empaths, but they depart in a few interesting ways. They feel deeply in their environment. They feel deeply when they're around other individuals, and they can feel intensely through their sensory awareness, but they also synthesize what they're feeling through their own feelings, and they create kind of like this artistic fusion between themselves and their outer world, and they express that. They express it through some type of creative language, whether it's writing, painting, dancing. I mean, it really just turns into this creative ability to express meaning from their own personal sensory awareness. And so expressives are similar to empaths, but a little bit different in how it shows up in their own personality.
Would the two gifts be able to commingle together?
Yes. Yeah. So you'll see an intuitive visionary, and that shows up in a certain way. An empathic expressive, an empathic visionary. I've seen intuitive empaths. And so they converge. The abilities converge in unique ways. And that's kind of where I'm kind of on the cutting edge, where I'm watching the way that these abilities fuse in different ways. And I'm trying to quantify that in a way and help the sensitive understand how it works for them so they can use it in their life in practical ways.
Do you think visionaries sometimes mix that up with being a mediumship?
I think that mediumship can fall along different lines in the gifts, right? So this is what you're asking is like, how do you quantify channelers or mediumship? And so when I look at that mediumship quality, I look at the way the sensitive is perceiving their own information and that information acquisition that I mentioned earlier. How do they perceive it? And so it's different for visionaries than it would be for somebody who's just purely empathic.
Okay.
That might not answer your question. So ask me again in a different way, and let's see if I can answer what you're getting at, because I can sense that there's still like, I'm not getting it.
Well, I'm thinking as if I'm somebody else, that I'm a visionary, but I've got it in my head that I'm actually a medium. How do you get them to differentiate the two?
Okay, good. Yeah.
Or
so good
are they
clarification.
even different?
It is interesting how the medium perceives the information. So you've heard about clairaudience, and you've heard about claircognizance, and you've heard about the clairs, right?
Right.
The clairs are traditionally how you describe people's abilities and the way that they sense their senses perceive this type of information. Can you be a visionary and be a medium? Yes, but the information is going to come through a visionary quality. Can you be an auditory medium and a visionary? Yes, but they commingle in an interesting way. So you might see an image first, which was truly a psychic image. That's one of the things that they did in the studies, how they found that these individuals were truly psychic. They perceived an image. The way they perceived the image is the image came in before they actually thought, right? So that is a truly visionary, psychic, clairvoyant experience, because the image arrived first and then the thought process happened. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, you'll get the image first if you're a true visionary, a clairvoyant. Now, when it gets into mediumship, a lot of mediums are auditory. Okay. It's an auditory clairaudience because they're hearing, right? And so that might not necessarily be a visionary capability because they're hearing through their auditory. So that would be called auditory intuitive or auditory intuition.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I perceive of it when I go to quantify how a sensitive perceives the information or that acquisition of information that's coming in that can't be explained through other means, like a logical thought process. Mm-hmm. So when you're looking at visionaries, can they be mediums? Yes, but the information shows up through an image first. Then if they're also auditory, right, which is an intuitive process, they're going to hear it through the clairaudience. So they would be an intuitive, visionary. So if you got an email from me that says you're an intuitive visionary, can you be a medium? Yes. And it's going to work for you kind of how, as I explained it. You'll see images that are coming from spiritual personalities or afterlife personalities. And then you'll hear it first and then you'll see the image. Is that how it works for you, or is that not how it works for you?
That's not for me. This is
so you might be something else.
Of other people. Yeah,
okay.
I'm way something else.
Well, explain how it works for you, and then we can do that. Unless you don't want to identify.
Well,
yourself.
no. It's as far as the mediumship and things like that. I've got several friends, and they call themselves different names, spiritualists or mediums. Okay. But when I hear the term visionary, and I got to reading how you explained it, it made me wonder if this is something that they're getting and it's not really, they're a visionary and they're not really a medium, but they perceive themselves as a medium. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally.
Okay.
You can identify yourself as a medium, but not necessarily understand the channel.
Okay. Right. Okay.
So if you look at channelers, and channelers are individuals who are accessing information, most likely from some type of personality. You know, we're familiar through popular media with people who are channeling afterlife souls, right, friends and families, but they're also channelers who are channeling extraterrestrial beings or channeling like some type of planetary consciousness, right? Or some type of goddess. And so there's different types of channeling, but the channel is essentially when a medium, this is traditionally how it's understood, the medium steps aside, okay? The medium is typically stepping aside and allowing their mind, body to be used as a medium for that entity. That's typically the way it's understood. How I'm explaining it is a little different. And I'm glad we delineated it, because how I'm explaining it is that the person is still in their conscious reality and they're not stepping aside. Does that probably clarifies it a lot better? Yes,
it does. Thank you. That explains a lot.
Okay.
Maria, when
we can go into mediumship further and channeling further.
Okay.
I love that subject. When you took the sensitive test, what was your response to that?
I got the highest possible range for empathic sensory awareness. And then I scored in the significant range for sensitive expressive.
Ooh. Okay.
I don't know if that's good or not.
That's really interesting. Did you feel like it was valid? Did you feel like it was valid for you, or not so much?
Not so much, because I don't express. I'm not expressive. I'm not talented musically. I don't do art. I don't do any of that. And I think maybe that might be because I'm a daughter of an engineer. I'm afraid I'm going to do it wrong. So I just never did it. So I don't know. I just don't. Okay. So here's another way to ask it.
In other ways, though.
Yeah. Here's another way to ask it. Not that I'm trying to make it fit, because it might not fit.
Okay.
But when you're around somebody else, okay, as an empath, and you feel disturbed about something that's coming from somebody else, let's just say anger or unresolved stuff from the day, do you feel like you need to talk to them about it?
No.
So you don't feel like you need to express what you're feeling?
No.
So you hold it inside?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
That's interesting.
And I carry it home with me and deal with it there.
Do you express how you're feeling to anybody?
Not really.
That's interesting, because usually expressives need to have an outlet to express what they're feeling, especially empathic expressives.
I think it's because I can come home and I had to go outside and I have animals, and I talk to my animals all the time because they don't talk back. So
you're still expressing it.
I guess that's what it is. I mean, I just, walk barefooted.
It doesn't have to fit if it doesn't fit. I mean, hey, I'm willing to admit
Right.
that sometimes, the test is not perfect.
Mhm.
I'm trying to still formulate the test. That's why I like to ask if you felt
Right.
like any part of it didn't necessarily resonate. How about the empath piece? How about the
The
empath?
empath, yes, because I can just high tense situations. I can feel that. I can feel happy. I can, whatever room I walk around or people that I'm around, you get that feeling. It's like whether you want to be around this person or you don't.
Right.
But the expressive part, I guess I keep that inside to myself, is simply because people don't want to listen. And I don't ever want to overstep my bounds with somebody.
Right. You're careful. That's good. That's good boundaries. I love that you have good boundaries and you're describing having good boundaries. Empaths really, really need good boundaries. A lot of times they don't have them, so they have to develop them or understand what
Right.
boundaries are because they literally can't filter that out, that energetic stream that comes into them. The other thing that might help about the expressive, just as an aside, just as something to think about, is that it's that fusion really that is distinctive to an expressive. So they go into an environment, especially an empathic expressive, if it's true, if it's a true result. And you not only feel the undercurrents, the environment, and you pick up on all that and it floods into you, okay? But the expressive, what makes them distinctive is that they fuse with that energy in artistic ways. And so you don't have to be a classical artist, but you're synthesizing the energy and something typically wants to come out from that synthesis and that fusion to be expressed in the world. And so it can be deeper meaning. It can be deeper meaning about relationships between yourself and others and how you perceive that meaning. But it's also what it means to be human. There is something specific about how the expressive feels it uniquely, singularly, and then expresses it somehow through their own being. Now, some people are expressives and they don't express it. Where that becomes a problem and where you'll know if you're a true expressive is if you don't communicate and you don't get that out of yourself, you will get sick. I talk about that. It's a reality that people who are truly expressive need to move it out of them as a source, a creative source almost. And if you don't, you'll feel constipated, stagnant, depressed, moody. That's part of it. You kind of become symptomatic if you're not expressing. And so if you don't feel that those things resonate with you, then you might not be an expressive. You might be more of an intuitive empath.
Okay.
Because intuitive empaths don't have that need. They don't have that drive.
Right.
They don't have that yearning to get it out. Intuitives perceive, and they can perceive intuitively and empathically. So I'm going to go back and look at yours again and evaluate it, because maybe you're an intuitive empath. That's kind of what it feels like to me from what you're describing.
Unless you get, like, if I get into a vehicle after something and I start like cussing and screaming it because of what has just happened that I didn't like. Now that's expressive. I'm good at that.
It's constant. It never turns off. The need to express it. It's not just once in a while. That's how you'll know if you're an expressive. And the people that are listening to this can relate to it. It's a constant. It's a constant yearning to get it out in an expressive way. So it might not be through as like drama. Like people are like, oh, well, I'm not an actor. I'm not an expressive artist. But it's subtle. But the things that you can see that are consistent are that drive, that inherent drive and that motivation. And it just doesn't go away. And so, like I said, if it doesn't come out, it gets to the point where it gets kind of, there's a deep conflict. That's the best way to describe it. There's a deep conflict within to get it out. And if you don't, you'll get sick. That's the best way I can really describe it in words.
Okay.
Interesting. I thought for sure mine would come up as expressive, but nope.
Really?
No.
What did you get? What'd you get?
It said I scored the highest possible range for intuitive sensory awareness, and I also scored the highest possible range for empathic sensory awareness.
All right, so you you got the intuitive empathic. So I kind of described the intuitive empathic.
Yeah, all of that resonates very much with me, especially when it talks about the types of work that you go into.
Mm-hmm.
I went to college for criminal justice, and now I own a spiritual healing center. So, I mean, it makes sense.
But a lot of forensic psychologists and criminal justice people are intuitive. I mean, I talked and interviewed an FBI profiler extensively. Man, she actually became a good friend of mine. And she was one of the most intuitive, empathic people I've ever met. I mean, she was so off the charts. And she became really, for me, like proof that the intuitive empath really is a distinctive personality because of her work, because of what she was able to do. I mean, and she had almost like visionary experiences where images would show up for her. I mean, they were rare. You know, I'm more where I'll have an image show up for me, you know, clairvoyantly. But she was one of the reasons that led me down the path, really, to like articulate these individuals exist and they're successful. Really, they're successful. Because a lot of times that's the other thing I get from people like, you know, the hoi polloi crowd that are like, intuitives aren't able to make money. They're not successful. You know, they're gypsies. And it was like, no, they actually work in fields and they're CEOs and they're top level. And, you know, and so I saw these people, right? And when you start to talk to them, a lot of them, like, I mean, the FBI profiler, she knew what her gifts were, right? She knew, she could articulate it. But a lot of people, they don't know. That's the other phenomenon. Right. They don't necessarily know that they're gifted until they meet other people and they're like, how'd you know that? Or how did you do that? Right. And they're kind of side by side watching them and their processes. And they're like, oh, I don't know. I've just always been able to do this.
Yeah, that's the experience I had when I first found out.
Yeah, that's one of the other marks of the truly gifted is they just kind of operate in their world. You know, they might be considered a little different or whatever, but they're not necessarily self-aware. And so that was the other profound thing that I was like, how can they not know?
That's a good question. I'm just floating down the river, la 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 la. Anyways, we have to take a break. It's top of the hour, so let's do that. And when we get back, we'll hear more about this wonderful creation, 4 Gifts of the Highly Sensitive. Stay close, everyone.
Hey members, the new KGRA-DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA-DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA-DB.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA Classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button. So just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
Hello, you are listening to Soul Wanderings here on KGRA Digital Broadcasting, Salt Lake City, Utah, and Hudson Valley, New York. Welcome back, ladies. We have Maria Duff, my co-host and contest winner from my 200th episode, and our guest, Courtney Marchesani, author of 4 Gifts of the Highly Sensitive. Embrace the science of sensitivity, heal anxiety and relationships, and connect deeply with your world. Welcome back. Hello, there you
Yay!
are.
Here we go again.
Round
We made it.
2. Ding, ding,
You're right.
ding. So, how did you create this sensitive test, Courtney? I'm sure there's a lot of little moving parts and aspects that went into it, but it seems pretty accurate. What was your method behind it, and why did you want to create it?
Well, I felt like I was talking and speaking to a specific group, which is the gifted sensitive. And so there wasn't a lot out there about the gifted sensitive. I mean, there were books about, esoteric concepts and topics, and certainly intuition was out there, but I felt like there wasn't a voice speaking to the gifts. And so the test is basically like a psychometric evaluation. And in psychology, psychometric evaluations is really the only way when you're in personality psychology and personality studies. And so Dr. Elaine Aron, she's the one that did the first highly sensitive person scale. And so I dove down into her scale for a while and looked at the questions she asked, the way she asked them. And so her test, the highly sensitive person test, has been studied routinely and was valid and replicable and studied cross-culturally. So I drew from hers. They're not the same questions that she asked, but I kind of drew from where she was going with hers and how consistent it was. And then I applied my own questions based off of the way that I had seen the gifts appear. But the only way to ask gifted sensitives about their gifts is to go into their personal experience and also their sensory awareness. So the way that I shaped all the questions were how I saw the gifts appear through these types of patterns to kind of hone in on what type of pattern they emerge for each individual and for the gifted sensitive. So it took a while. It took a while to develop the questions, and then I'm still working on it. Yeah, I'm still working on it. So I'm still trying to figure out, especially for the visionary, how to ask these questions that visionaries can feel like, yes, this is me. Because right now there are certain types of visionaries that have taken the test that I've interviewed, and they're like, it shows up differently for them. As I was describing in our opening. You can have one visionary who has a photographic memory and it has autobiographical details of their own life memorized from the time they were born, literally. But they don't necessarily have that clairvoyance that we talked about, but they still have a visionary quality. And so they follow along certain lines. So it's going to get better as we develop and as we evolve.
I think it's neat. I love tests like that give me a deeper understanding and knowledge into myself, especially when, like we were talking before the break, and some of us don't have the awareness that what we are experiencing is any different than anyone else. We just think what's going on with us, everyone experiences. And it's when someone has that conversation with you and you're like, wait, what? You have like these eye-opening moments and it all starts making sense to you. So things like this, like your sensitive test and your book for that matter, are so beneficial to I would say everyone, because there's something in there definitely for everyone. But
It's
especially those
it's a touchstone. Yeah. Like it's a touchstone for
yeah.
people to find it, but you can go, like you said, as deep as you want into it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and especially those who are questioning, do I have a gift? Am I a sensitive? This book would be and the sensitive test would be so beneficial for them to read and to take.
Well, I think it's interesting that you both scored in the higher end. That's not always the case. A lot of people ask me, well, do people take the test and they're all on the high end? And I'm like, no. I know I have people who answer and they only answer like yes to 2 or 3 of the questions. So they're really, they're not gifted in the way that you guys are in your own ability, and the intuitive and the empathic ability. Now, I also think it's interesting that Maria got a significant, right? So a significant, when you get a significant value, that means that you're not at the highest end. And so I also think it's interesting that you don't necessarily feel like an expressive, but your test result also showed you weren't on the highest end either. You were kind of in the middle. So there's positive, significant, and then the highest. And so the highest expression of it, especially when it's overlapping between multiple, is really intense for the sensitive. It gets more and more intense as you get higher and higher and higher in that highest range, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, that does make sense. I just, I know the empath part of it drives me insane a lot, but you learn how to deal with it, and you just have to go, oh, okay, I need to remove myself from this situation and just go. That's the best advice ever.
I think that's beautiful, though, is having that awareness that you are sensitive to other people's feelings and emotions and whatnot, and that you know how, like you said earlier with Courtney, to set the boundaries and to know when is a good time for you to remove yourself from an experience.
Right.
It doesn't go away. I mean, I wish I could tell you that like, as you're going to age, it's going to go away, or it's going to like magically morph into like less of a magnitude that you already feel. But it's part of our system. It's part of our nervous system. It's part of our, it's part of who we are. And so you can't really like turn it off, but you can find ways to cope with it. And so that's my like whole advocacy pitch. Like once you become self-aware and you recognize that you are picking up on all this information, you can cope with it, and if you have to remove yourself from situations, that's what you have to do. I mean, that is a defense mechanism. But I also teach how to, because a lot of people that are sensitive just want to isolate. They don't want to go into social situations. They don't want to go in, into working a job, 10 hours a day while they're surrounded by, this cacophony all the time that's blaring at them, and you can have emotions blaring at you too, right? I mean, it's not just, auditory sensitivity. It's like things are streaming in. And so my feeling is like, if you isolate and you have to, because you have to, then that's what you got to do. But there's also like, how do we attenuate or attune to environments to be able to take these discordant or dissonance in and be able to adapt? Because that's the other thing about sensitivity that's kind of like a little known fact, is that sensitivity really is a way to mediate painful situations, emotional toxicity. And so it is an alarm bell. When I say mediate, it's an alarm bell for us to recognize we're perceiving too much. But you can adapt in different environments and get stronger. And so that's my other kind of like passionate advocacy piece, is like sensitives do have the ability, because a lot of times we're just called weak. It's like a generalization, like, oh, well, you're weak, or you're tearful, or you're crying. And so then that must mean there's something wrong with you. Whereas it's like, it's not something wrong. We're actually translating the intensity of how we feel in an external way. And so that's just more information for the sensitive to kind of gauge where their threshold is, their own pain point. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of laughing a little bit because when you talked about sensitives like to isolate, I built a home way far away in the woods, away from everybody. So when I come home, I'm isolated, and I love it because I'm in the woods and I can go barefoot and I can walk through the woods and I can connect and just go, okay, this is how life should be.
Yes. I mean, and I totally agree with you that we need to detach, especially empaths. Mm-hmm. Empaths need to detach from those environments and rest. Because if you don't, your central nervous system will be in fight or flight all the time. And then you won't get that calming parasympathetic rest response. It'll constantly be on, high gear. And that is not good for empaths or any of the gifted sensitives, because then they're just constantly in fight or flight all the time and they're not healing. Yeah, you're not getting the healing down response. I'm talking about like the extreme of not coming back.
Yes.
Like being out there and like not coming back. Yeah, like going towards the sunset and being like, I'm never going back. I mean, we as sensitives, I feel like the other part of my book is like, we need to be in community creating change and helping other people, because typically we've been through that process and we've come back the other side. And so we need to lead other people through it safely because we've already been there. And so we need to shine a light. And so I try to tell sensitives, please don't go out there, and just cut off from society, because I feel like sensitives have a place in society to help.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you, how does one who is sensitive navigate through their daily lives, like with other people, their jobs, being out in public?
It is, it's a full-time job, right? Yeah. A lot of people, especially my clients or my patients at the clinic, they'll just say, this is a full-time job. Like, it's exhausting to be a sensitive person. And I agree with that. You have to put in the work to manage your sensitivity. But once you do it and it becomes routine, life becomes actually more manageable. Mm-hmm. And so the reward is in actually doing those things daily. And even if that means taking a break while you're at work, like 3 times a day, and leaving the boardroom or leaving your staff rooms and taking a moment to yourself, it's self-care. So it's all about the practicalities of learning, one, how your sensitivity is triggered, right? The people that trigger it, the situations that trigger it, your environment when it triggers it. So being aware of when you're feeling that onslaught coming in, that's the first part. Then the second part is, what do you do about it to mitigate it, right? To feel like you can handle that stress without having a come apart. And then third, it's about, this is the beautiful thing about sensitivity. It will teach you what you need to do when you start to detect it and how it's working for you, because everybody's different. Okay. You will start to be able to almost get like a pre-warning, right? And that's the woo part of it that we don't understand, but you'll get a pre-warning that says, don't go, right? It's legitimate, like a legitimate intuition, like, don't go. And so when you start to perceive that information or that acquisition of information, how it works for you, it's amazing. You can steer your way through traffic. You can avoid certain people, and it becomes this flow that you're involved in with life, in this river of information, and you become a lot less chaotic. Things become a lot less dramatic. You align yourself with the people that you resonate with, and it really becomes kind of magical. That's the only way that I can describe it, but you have to do those 3 things. You have to recognize your triggers. You have to recognize what is causing it, what's behind it, and then put in the therapy or what you need, and then manage that. When you start to manage it, things open up.
I've had those experiences the last few years, and it has been magical. When you really learn to navigate all of it, you look at it more as a gift than a blessing or a curse. You know what I mean? It is something really amazing indeed. How did you know that you were sensitive? And if you don't mind sharing with us, what is the response to your sensitive test?
Oh, wow. So that's a complex question, because I thought that I was totally, like a high-end intuitive. Mm-hmm. All my stuff seemed to be, that's where I started anyway, was with intuition and precognition, because I'll tell you, the first experience that I ever had was through a dream. And I don't talk about this very much because it's kind of like my old life, but it's important because it kind of puts context on what I'm about to say when I did my own test. So I thought that I was just intuitive. But it turns out I'm an intuitive visionary.
Keep going. It's her cat.
The reason why I thought I was intuitive was because when I was in my 20s, I was in college at the University of Montana. I was in my psych degree, and I was married young and had a child young, but I was still in college, still working full time, very busy. And I had this dream that one of my husband's friends or acquaintances, now this is in the dream, it's a true story. He gets pulled over because he drove through a stop sign. All right. He's out of control. He drives through a stop sign, gets pulled over. Cops come, open up the trunk, and he's got cannabis or marijuana is how we called it at the time, but heroin, guns, ammunition. I mean, like armored to the hilt in his car. And so the cops take him. He gets arrested. And the next part of the dream is I see him with his arms behind his back in front of a judge getting sentenced. So I wake up from the dream, right? And I'm in the bed with my husband, my ex-husband, but I'm pushing him going, wake up, wake up, wake up, right? Because I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was something bad was about to happen. So I basically said to him, like, I don't know what to do, but you need to stay away from this guy. And he just basically said, you're paranoid. You're a paranoid. That was his answer. And I was like, I think you should stay away from this guy. Like I was kind of insistent, but I didn't know what it was. So sure enough, 3 months later, we're in our house in Missoula, baby's in bed. We're watching the nightly news. And here he is. Here's the guy on TV in front of the judge with his hands behind his back. And I looked over at my husband and I just went, and I was like stunned, speechless. And I'm pointing. And he's looking at me like, what the hell? And so the guy gets arrested, all this other stuff ensues from that. But that was my first experience. And so the only way I could look at that at the time was like intuition. And I thought that maybe it was like mother's intuition, because I had a baby and I had heard of mother's intuition, but I didn't realize that it was like a truly precognitive vision. And so many years later, other incidences happened, similar kind of vein, but even more exaggerated. And then finally I developed the test. So I take the test and I'm an intuitive visionary with empathic, high empathic. So I'm actually three of the four. For the expressive, I actually interviewed a lot of really great teachers, but what they described to me is kind of what I described to you as how the expressive. I don't have that quality and as high as I have the other three. And so I had to learn about the expressive more than what I've experienced with my own intuitive, visionary, and empathic abilities. Those I can describe like down to a science because I have them. So it's easier for me to talk about them. But the expressive, it gets a little bit harder because I don't necessarily have that personality type.
Yeah. You brought up teachers, and there was a question that I had read as part of your paperwork that I had with you. And there was a question about how teachers are working with children right now who are sensitive. How and are they taught through their education how to work and how to educate sensitive children, or are we like really left on our own? Because that's what I see. My partner's daughter she is 8 years old. Well, she turned 9 today, her birthday. She is so intuitive. She's so sensitive, and having conversations with her, like having conversations with an old soul. And I know she has, there's challenges at school and communication because people just don't understand her. But I look at her and I just like want to grab her and hold her tight because she's who I was at 8 years old,
I know it. It's so hard. I know it. It's so hard. And the difficulty is teachers are not taught when they go through their master's level education. Okay.
They're still not taught.
Not taught about the HSP personality type. And I don't know if that's just because it wasn't legitimized until later. And it's only this specialized type of psychologist that understands the HSP personality type. But when you even get into the gifts, like my book is so far like out there, ahead of the curve in so many ways. And so my whole like advocacy effort is to try to get this book in the hands of teachers and educators and administrators, because teachers and administrators do not learn about sensitivity. Now, you will see sensitivity come up and be cast through certain type of lights in the educational setting, ADD and ADHD, right?
Right.
Learning disorders. And so, and expressive language disorders, and all these subtle nuances of the way that kids learn. Because the thing that stood out to me when I did all the research on sensitivity is that sensitive individuals, adults and children alike, they need more time to adjust. Okay. There's the bright lights, there's the ticking of the clock, there's the personality of the teacher and the way she moves throughout the room and how she's going to teach. And even in adults, we see this same type of adjustment time that's needed. So kids need to be able to learn what's happening in the room first, as a very first step, sensorially, or they won't learn. They won't learn. They'll be so tuned into all the sensory awareness, they're going to look like they're daydreaming, they're tuned out, or they're fidgety, or all these other things that the teacher looks at and goes, well, they're just not, tuned in, or they're not present. There's reasons why they're not present. And it's not always because they're ADD, but that's kind of how we get lumped into these categories, because they don't understand what's going on internally. Now, I do think that ADD and ADHD certainly have components of sensitivity, because kids who are ADD and ADHD are totally sensitive. I mean, and there's a whole amount of research now that's being mounted to understand those reactions. But then there's just the sensitive kid, who doesn't have a learning disability, but they're sensitive, and they might be so sensitive that it's affecting relationships, friendships, their relationship with the teacher and how the teacher perceives them, which a lot of time that kind of goes out the window, because it's just then up to the parent, right, to help the kid navigate through a teacher who's not sympathetic or empathetic, because the kid is totally on their own. Right. And so I think that it needs to be part of curriculums for teachers.
I agree.
I mean, they need to at least have one module like they do on dyslexia and ADD and ADHD. They don't have to be experts in those, right? Because they can't diagnose kids, and they can't do diagnostic criteria on their kids in their classroom, but they could certainly be more aware. I do think that they see at least 4 or 5 kids in their classroom. If they have up to 30 kids, they see at least 4 or 5 that are highly sensitive. And that's what research shows, like 1 in 4, 1 in 5. So they're there. And it's the luck of the draw. It's like Russian roulette. You might get a teacher who's totally tuned in, who's this warm, lovely personality, who takes that kid under their wing and helps them kind of develop and self-cultivate. Classroom survival skills is really what we're talking about, how the sensitive child survives through a classroom setting that is not attuned to their particular learning style. And so I think that so much more needs to be done on this. Obviously, I'm extremely passionate about it. So, I could wax rhapsodic about, highly sensitive kids in education, but not enough is being done. And we're being labeled and we're being mislabeled. And that's one of the other reasons why I wrote the book. Don't label us.
I agree. I'm actually going to refer this book to a lot of my friends who teach. I don't know if you've been around littles lately, like children, I call them littles. I feel like most of them coming into this experience now are sensitive, more so than ever before.
Yeah, they're going to be.
Have conversations with them.
We just went through the pandemic where all their parents that are, pregnant with these little ones that are coming in, they've been isolating. So I just told you that when you isolate, I mean, maybe I didn't add this, but when you isolate, you get more sensitive. You become more sensitive. And so everybody in all our societies right now are like highly sensitive because they're just coming out of isolation back into their societies. And you're seeing it. There's mental health issues. There's anxiety. There's all these things that are cropping up right now. And there's this huge mental health awareness campaign because we've been isolating for so long. So the answer for the sensitive kid that's coming in is understanding, patience, kindness, gentle, teaching them what it takes to be a human in their embodiment right from the get-go. Like hopefully they don't have to have these horrendous childhood experiences to learn through them and then look back and go, oh, I was sensitive. My hope is that we evolve and help these sensitive kids that are coming in now express who they are and be who they've chosen to come in and to become.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some more of that. We need some more of that.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit how being a sensitive affects us on a physical level.
It affects us in every way. I'm sorry.
And not just that, but you talked about previously how trauma and autoimmune diseases and things of that nature are connected to.
Totally. Yes, you're right. Good pickup. So, because highly sensitive people are different. I mean, we are physiologically different in that we have some parts of it is known and some part of it is unknown. It hasn't materialized yet, but we basically have an ability to perceive more sensory information into our body. That happens through our brain. It happens through our body. So the first thing that will typically happen, right, is what I already talked about, which is kind of like fight or flight. If you're in a situation and you're a highly sensitive person and you're not aware, you're going to be activating fight or flight more often. You're going to be on that hair trigger is the best way to describe it, where you're easily and quickly activated into kind of like an alarm mode. And so it affects your gastrointestinal system first, typically, where you'll see, and especially kids, right? Especially kids who are having a lot of anxiety, it affects their gut typically first, and they don't know what's going on. And so they'll describe gut pain, nausea, right? And it's called psychosomatic because parents are just like, oh, well, they just want to get out of school. Well, that's not necessarily the case. It's actually they are experiencing gastrointestinal upset. And the reason why is because in our gut, there's dual sensory innervation. So I talk about the sensory neurons. I talk about motor neurons. I talk about all that medical stuff in the book that we kind of mentioned at the opening. How it's different for sensitive people is that sensory neurons go immediately to the spinal cord and other areas like the gut first before the brain actually processes the sensory information that's coming in. And so the best way to describe it is like all these alarm bells will be going off physically. So you'll feel vibrations, sensations, sometimes even pain and not know why. And that's because the sensitivity is so heightened in the system that all these activities are going off in the body without the brain processing them. Especially sensory neurons going immediately to the spinal cord. The brain doesn't get that information right away. It does eventually. And so then it tries to sort it out. But even in that process, there's an additional process that I talk about in the book called the HPA axis. The HPA axis is where all the sensory information goes in to the brain, right? And that whole fight or flight, the HPA axis is the regulator of all your hormones, okay? Your adrenal glands, your adrenal system. So it all works in concert together, right? All these organs and all these systems. But for the highly sensitive person, they're much more touchy. That's the best way to describe it. And so that's why when I break down the symptoms of the book that people have that may not have been able to be diagnosed, here's what happens, okay? When the sensitive person goes into their doctor, they have gut pain, they might have migraines, right? There could be chronic fatigue or other things happening, and the doctor goes to diagnose them, does all the labs, and everything looks normal. So they say to the individual who's seeking out a diagnosis, look, everything looks pretty normal. No, after that goes on for a while diagnostically, what ends up happening is the doctor will go, okay, this person has a pain process that's happening that we can't diagnose. So it must be unresolved emotional. So that means trauma, right? And then they'll say, okay, they need a psychiatrist or a psychologist because the medical term is medically unexplainable symptoms. There's an actual like diagnostic criteria for individuals who are sensitive who cannot be diagnosed through any other type of diagnosis. So then they get referred to a psychologist, and then the psychologist starts to say, this has got to be unresolved emotional stuff that is creating physical complaints. My argument with this whole process is the physical complaints are real. Mm-hmm. Just like that little kid who goes to school who's having gut upset and anxiety. Now, pediatricians will look at that kid and say, okay, because they have these kids who show up who have anxiety. They're anxious. They're little perfectionists. They want everything to be a certain way. They have gut pain. They have headaches. And so they look at it and say it's psychosomatic. My contention is that it's not psychosomatic. It's very real for the individual, and it's because they're sensitive. And there's no diagnostic criteria for it. So they get lumped into kind of like this wastebasket. Or no man's land. And it's totally up to the sensitive individual to figure it out and to find alternative strategies. So that's why a lot of times they turn to alternative medicine, complementary mental health or complementary health.
Yeah. Yeah. From my own personal experience, I spent, a good 20 years trying to get a diagnosis, like what is wrong with me, because I had all of those, the adrenal fatigue, the chronic pain, the gut issues, the headaches, the light sensitivity, like all of the things. And I did receive a diagnosis, the same diagnosis a few times, 20 years later. I've never really taken ownership. It is a diagnosis, but I've noticed, and I care for it all holistically too. I'm not on any Western medicine, but I've noticed that the more that I've worked on the trauma-related experiences that I've had as a child and up until 12 years ago, that my symptoms have gotten less severe. And so I started researching the links between trauma and the neurological autoimmune disease that I've been diagnosed with and how they correspond with each other. And sure enough, there's studies showing that trauma is linked to this particular diagnosis that I received. And that's when I started doing the deep dive. And so when I was reading your book, I was in tears. I was like, because it's not in your head, right?
No, it's not in your head.
You always think that you're crazy because you're going through the pain. You're having the experiences and everyone's telling you you're okay. Everything's coming up normal, but nothing is normal.
No, it's not normal. And it's so anxiety provoking. I know I don't need to tell you this, but I just want to validate everything you just said with another additional piece.
I didn't know I'd get so emotional.
Well, when you're going through that process, right? Every conceivable thing goes through your mind. Okay. Mm-hmm. And when they can't figure it out, you almost want to have some kind of horrible diagnosis just so that you know what it is, because then at least you'll know what it is. You can have a protocol, you can take a medication, maybe it'll be Aleve, right? It'll alleviate what's happening with you. And so the literal crazy making is being in that machine and not knowing. Mm-hmm. And having this overarching fear of every appointment you go to and trying to communicate with doctors that it is real and that you're not crazy. But the reason why I explained it the way I did is so people know that you just go into kind of this wastebasket. And I have had communication with doctors where I have said, hey, this isn't right, and they've said, medicine is not an exact science, Courtney. Like, you need to understand that we're not going to be able to explain everything. And so for me, it was like I wanted to keep digging and digging and digging deeper, because that anxiety provoking process does make you feel like you're crazy when you're in it, when you're in the machine. But I'm so happy that you said that you had some alleviation and some relief by looking into the trauma aspect of it and connecting the dots yourself, because then that's very empowering when you feel like you have some kind of control over the situation.
Right. Well, I think anytime, no matter what someone is going through, if they do research and do the deep diving on their own, because doctors, although they go through all these years of school, they don't know everything. They don't have the answers for everything. And most of the time, I'm not saying to go self-diagnose yourself, but a lot of times you can find some of the answers in the research. Where they don't take the time or know how to do that, right?
You have to trust your intuition, right? And so your intuition will inform you about things if you listen and you take some of that anxiety off of it and you start to get into the body and listening to the body, to those subtle warning signs, right? the thing that I talk about in the book that's so important to what we're discussing right now is the warning sensations. Mm. Sensitive people are known for neglecting their own warning sensations. And warning sensations are always there, right? But because somebody might be on that hypersensitive level where they're receiving so much sensory information and their body is constantly responding because they're on that hair trigger a lot of the time, it feels exhausting to attune to the body and give it what it needs. But when you do start to employ, right, strategies, and your intuition will guide you, you'll start to see that connection like you did, where you go, okay, this is what I need. And unfortunately, people are not going to want to hear this because it's not popular, but you start to recognize like, okay, I need to go to bed by 9. Mm-hmm. Okay, I need to get off the screen, right? Because I'm being flooded with images or bright light or whatever. And it really, you'll start to see when you break it out that it's the lifestyle stuff that really makes a difference. And so I feel like as sensitives, we neglect a lot of our sensory warning signs when it's blaring at us saying you need to take a break, or you need to get a massage, or you need to do some aromatherapy. A lot of times we just don't want to do that stuff. And it's totally holistic. That's what holistic medicine is all about, is how to treat the sensitive nervous system. But doctors don't learn about sensitivity. I mean, I think that's why I go into the first chapter, like we were called neurotic, hysterical, especially women. I mean, we were kind of locked up, for a long time in mental institutions because, the sensitivity stuff was not understood. So it was considered madness. And so my approach is like, please start educating doctors. I mean, we're starting to see more about empathy now, thank God. I mean, there's movements for empathy in healthcare settings, and there's movements for doctors to understand how empathy is so crucial between the patient relationship. So I think that sensitivity is coming, unfortunately, we're like a cost of the system, not adapting fast enough for what patients really want, but the demand is there and it's coming. And I think doctors will have to learn in medical school about empathic relationships, and they'll also how to use their own empathy between their patients and to listen.
That'll be the day. That'll be the day.
Oxford right now is doing a whole thing, on empathy in healthcare settings. And I'm like, I'm in. I'm like, yeah. Good. Yeah, let's get empathy in healthcare. Let's get empathy in hospital settings and in clinics so that doctors are at least aware that people need that bedside manner. They need to connect, and the patients should really be heard because they really are the experts on their own body. But a lot of times they're negated. Their experience is neglected. And so I feel like it's coming. We just need to be patient, and we need to be outspoken about it too as sensitives and be like, we need this healthcare. It's a new kind of healthcare.
Yeah. My favorite is I have an integrative health doctor, and life changer, game changer for me. Like, if those are the doctors I recommend to everybody, they are so incredible. But that leads me to food, because when I met with him, he was like, what kind of foods do you eat? And although I thought I was healthy, right? I'm eating healthy. I realized I wasn't eating so healthy, and I know you have a take on this. What is?
It's such a hot button issue, right? Because there's so much about nutrition, right? And how you need
to say, how does our food affect our
detox? Yeah, how you need to detox and how you need to stop doing certain things. The practical thing that I wanted to mention earlier is the only time you really see sensitivity in medical terminology is for allergies. That's the only clinical thing that you'll see sensitivity or hypersensitivity medically is an allergy. Okay. So allergies come up a lot of times with regard to nutrition and food and what people are eating. And so, there's tests for allergens and there's all kinds of things you can do. But what the result is a really expensive process. It's very expensive to do allergy tests, to get nutritionists. Functional medicine doctors, like you said, the right one is wonderful because they can decode a lot of that for you in the reactions that you're having in your body. But sensitive people absolutely have to steer away from certain things, or they will have horrible reactions, especially in the gastrointestinal tract. So you start to see things like colitis, Crohn's, these severe reactions and functional gastrointestinal disorders where it's because of the types of food that a sensitive is eating. And they kind of can result in those chronic conditions if not handled earlier. And so I do not have one protocol that I say sensitives should use, but you have to use common sense. And so typically you do have to go through a detoxification process. You have to get rid of all dairy. You have to get rid of all sugar. You have to get rid of all gluten for a while. And you have to get rid of all the common offenders. And then once you get through the common offenders, you kind of go through this period where things disappear. The skin gets really bright, right? And you see this vibrance, because you're detoxing. Now, it's a horrible process to go through. I've been through it many, many times. And it's all this toxicity comes up and you just want to kill people. I mean, it's horrible, but that's the reality of the situation is everything comes up. And so my best advice is to go through that process with either a coach or a doctor or somebody who's supportive who can help walk you through it. I do not recommend doing it on a one night's notice.
No.
Go through it thoughtfully, plan it out, remove yourself if you can from, toxicity and every level if you can, but that's hard to do. And so you can do it gently. Right? You can do gentle things that are really positive, like adding more water. That's always going to be a positive thing. Adding more alkalinity into your diet. Sometimes there's diets that sensitive need, like the FODMAP plan, where you don't have any oligosaccharides or any of these other things that really are toxic for the sensitive system. And so I go into that in my website and I talk about the sensitive expression in people's bodies that will respond to food in really negative ways. So, that is a whole field. Nutritional science is a whole field that I've taken a deep dive into, and sensitives typically need to figure that out if they want to feel balanced and healthy.
I highly recommend doing that health. Deep dive. Yes. It was worth every single penny of time I spent with my doctor and doing the detox to find. I've done it a couple of times, not a lot, but a couple of times so far. And really being aware of how sensitive you really are, it was mind blowing. Like, so when I eat that, it makes me feel like this. That makes sense. Right?
It's totally connected. And to your moods too. Like so many people don't understand about the connection between food and moods. And so I've had a friend, she's not a client, but she's a friend who solicits my advice a lot for issues. And she, she just recently had like some cancer, a cancer diagnosis. And so she came to me right away and was like, where do I begin? And I said, you need to do functional medicine, like immediately. So she started getting into the functional medicine stuff and she was like, it's a revelation, so she's doing a diary on the food and the mood connection, and I didn't want to be her coach because she's my friend. Right. And so you want to have that break. Right. And so I just basically said, go in this direction. Here's a couple of expert people. And now she's taking her deep dive and everybody's different. My stuff is different from yours. Everybody's system is different. So I can't say don't drink coffee, right? But for some people, some sensitives, coffee is like a drug. Sugar and the connection to dopamine, for some people, it's like heroin, right? For sensitive people. Then once they get into it, they get addicted. And so it has powerful effects. Food has powerful effects on your mind and body. And that's the simplest way that I can describe it. When you start to get into the science of nutrition, it gets really complex, what one sensitive person can eat versus what another can eat or drink.
Right. Quitting coffee, I thought would be the hardest thing I've ever done in my whole life. And I won't lie, it was challenging. But it was the best thing that I've done for my body. I haven't had coffee since May of last year, and I don't even need it. I don't want it, where it was something that was very much a part of my day-to-day. It was ritualistic for me. You know what I mean? Totally. And I'm sure it can
it's not just coffee. It's not just coffee. I mean, it's wine, it's beer, it's smoking cigarettes, it's doing
all the things.
It's doing vaping. I mean, sensitive people are, if they don't know, that they're sensitive, they oftentimes turn to those kind of substance to make themselves feel better,
Right.
to tune out or to blunt the senses or to get things to tune down. I mean, a lot of people who go through the recovery process
Mm-hmm.
who've been drinking since they were adolescents, even young as 12 and 13 years old, really kind of start to recognize as they go through the recovery process that they were sensitive and they didn't know it. And they lived in a chaotic household, and maybe that part they knew, but they didn't necessarily connect all the dots. And so then when you start to look at why, there's almost, it's a anesthetizing. It's like, these substances help us numb and blunt this intensity, this extraordinary intensity that we feel a lot of the time. There's legal things and there's illegal things, and so it depends on what you get exposed to early and what crowd you fall in. And then, unfortunately, from there, I mean, it can develop into a serious addiction. Right. And so, when you start to trace those lines back to the beginning, right? And you can see yourself with more compassion and you recognize, oh, that's why I was doing that. I'm a sensitive person. Life just changes on a dime. And you get to recast a lot of those experiences, understand why you were doing it, and see yourself with more empathy.
Right, exactly. That's so beautiful. And it's really a neat discovery, even for myself, but watching other people when they start eliminating choices that they're making and how their whole presence changes, their whole aura, everything about them changes. I think we've all gone to a vice to not feel or to do, have different experiences because we just don't understand. But when we have that understanding, it becomes something we don't even want to do anymore because it's so important about how we feel now that we don't have those substances in our body versus when we did.
Absolutely. I mean, it would be nice if we can get to the point in our own discovery as sensitives where we can be in the world head on, right? Yeah. And face anything and not have to feel like we need to reach for something for comfort. Like we can just be who we are, be open, be the receptive individuals we are without needing to change that. And without needing to reach for something to take away any kind of discomfort. And that's where I'm in my own journey, is just be who I am, shine my light, not hide it under a bushel, and try to be as bright as I can with my kids, with my family, and not change or alter anything that I say or do because I'm afraid of what somebody else is going to say or think about me. Yeah. And I think sensitives really do try to predict the way they need to be, in the moment for somebody else's expectations. And I mean, we all have to conform in certain situations, but I find that in my own journey of self-discovery as a sensitive, I don't need to lead with it, but I don't need to change who I am either in every instance because of it either. It's okay to be who we are and not change that. Yeah, that's a good self, if we could say self-fulfilling prophecy in a good way, to Absolutely. Show up and arrive who we are as sensitives and not worry about what people think.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. I always look at messages like that as divine guidance. I know that you received it, and it could be all different types of ways, but little nuggets from the universe, take those and put them in your pocket. So good. I actually have a question from the chat room.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
Courtney, I have come to believe being an intuitive, also that intuition is not directly related to us, but is more the result of your soul getting a message from somewhere and then translating it to your consciousness. Do you agree?
Yes, I do agree. I think that there is definitely divine wiring, and intuition speaks through that. Absolutely. I talk about it in the book. I talk about divine inspirations and signs and omens and lucid dreaming, and I go into how divine wisdom comes through our intuition singularly. We talked about that channel before. I do believe that intuition is a channel for divine information.
Thank you. And Neutron, thank you for asking the question on chat over on KGRADB on Discord. So good. I love it when our listeners interact. Maria is one of the biggest interactions we have during the show. And now I have you here and you're so quiet.
I
Maria,
know, I'm
ask
very
a
quiet.
question. Come on, Maria.
Well, I'm always the
It's
one that's
fine.
posting all the gifts in there and making fun and sending that to AJ because she's starving to death by now.
Yeah, food pictures. Yes.
I
Thank
love
you
to
for
send her
that.
food
Food
pictures. You're very
pictures.
welcome. Oh, yes.
She always
Through
does
her whole
it
show.
because my show's during dinner time.
Like what? Like Twizzlers or, I mean, a cup of
I'll
coffee?
steak.
Pods her or what kind of GIFs?
I'll send her a steak gifs where somebody's cutting a steak open, or they're pouring a margarita, or there's some ice cream involved with sprinkles and chocolate fudge. Yeah, I love to torture her pretty much through the whole show.
She just makes me hungry. It's so good. We don't have that much longer till our show ends, and I definitely want to make sure that you have any final words that you want to share with us that you didn't get the opportunity to.
Yes. So on that last question, intuition is kind of a lost art.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I feel like is another part of the advocacy message about intuition in my book. And I did go into intuition as like a divine channel. Mm-hmm. It's in the last chapter. So I do feel like it's important to let people know that might be listening to this that if you feel like you've had an intuition, it's most likely an intuition, like don't doubt it. You don't have to take the deep dive like I did. I mean, I think that I was like, what is this? And I had to have an answer, but there's also the simple answer of, yeah, it's intuition. This is how it works for me, and not kind of get hung up on the language around it. It is what it is.
So what about deja vu?
Yeah. What about it? which part about it? Because there's a lot of opinions about deja vu.
Well, it's just. I mean, it happens to a lot of people, and it's just called deja vu, and people just blow it off. So, are they intuitive, or is it a visionary type thing? I'll wait till the last of the show to ask this, but
yeah, well, I don't have a lot of time. There's only a few minutes, but there's a lot of people that think deja vus are precognitive. And so if you have somebody who's an intuitive or a lucid dreamer, they're actually dreaming it before they experience it in reality, because the difference between waking life and sleeping life is very fascinating when you start to look at it. And so there's a lot of people that think that it's a precognitive experience in a dream, and then it's experienced in real life. And that can happen. There's also people that believe that we live in a multiverse, and there's like time dimensions and time shifts. Yeah. And so I'm withholding any kind of judgment about deja vu, but a lot of people that I know experience deja vu a lot. And so I do think that some part of it is unconscious and it's bubbling up into the conscious. Like we talked about intuition and people who are able to receive those answers because they're in touch with their unconscious mind. And those answers are coming up in this fluid thought process. I think deja vu is in that basket, that it's this awareness or more awareness or heightened awareness of the unconscious. And that balance between unconscious stuff and material coming in. It's like transliminality. That's what it's called. It's transliminality. So that psychological awareness before awareness.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot.
We could do a whole show on deja vu.
I'm sure we could.
Transliminality is awesome. More. Yeah, we could.
We could, but let's have a break. 2 hours is up. Everyone, go and grab this book, 4 Gifts of the Highly Sensitive by Courtney Marchesani. How can they do that, Courtney?
It's on, just go type in 4 Gifts of the Highly Sensitive and your, bookseller will show up. It could be at Barnes & Nobles. It could be at Amazon, wherever you shop. It's in the local libraries in some places around the U.S. And so look for your local library or ask for it. Maybe they'll be able to get it for you.
This is a book I would definitely sell in my shop, so I'm going to have to grab some extra copies.
Oh,
So
good.
And what's your website where everyone can get in touch with you and take the sensitive test?
It's at Inspired Potentials, inspiredpotentials.com.
Perfect. It has been so good getting to know
wonderful.
you and listening to all of the things that go on in that big, beautiful brain of yours.
And margaritas. I can't
Yes.
wait to have a GoPro cam when we have margaritas and what comes up, when you get
Be careful what you ask for. We might
Yes.
have to put together a little group conversation over the web.
Crazy stuff happens. It's awesome.
Yes, it does.
I would absolutely adore that.
Yes.
That would be an experience.
Okay. To be announced.
Yes. Thank you again. And Maria, you are such a big supporter of KGRA. All of the times that you show up in the chat rooms, not just for my show, for all of the shows and events and all of the ways you're part of the KGRA family, no doubt. So thankful for you spending time with us tonight and being here. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me because you're the one that saved me many years ago.
I'm just happy to have you here and keep working on those gifts and strengthening those muscles. It's so beautiful. I love watching people grow.
It's pretty
I have
fun.
the best job in the whole wide world. This and my job during the day, like I get to watch people come in like totally lost and crazy confused and then standing in their power and knowing who they are. And it's because of guests like this and support like you. So thank you to you both, and I wish you all the very best.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you, AJ.
Thanks for having me. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Courtney. And to all of you, my Wanderers, what a night, right? So good. Thank you all for being here. And a big shout out to my producer, Bill, who's always got my back. And until next week, we'll see you then. Good night, everyone.